Howard Grant. I'm the Executive Director of the Atlanta Board of Education, and in 2013 we realized that we needed to preserve the history of Atlanta Public Schools. So the then Superintendent Errol Davis gave us an opportunity to turn our former print shop into a museum and archives. Now the district has always had a museum and archives. Initially it was at David T. Howard building, and then it moved to the Carver building. And after Carver needed a little bit more space for instruction, you know, the archive materials ended up being in storage. So the entire process of building this archive and finding the artifacts and getting creative with it was really an educational process in terms of the history of Atlanta Public Schools. So we'll start the tour with our timeline. And this timeline was created from actual artifacts that we found, real newspaper articles and real pictures that we scanned, and we created a wallpaper type. So Daniel O'Keefe is whom we call the founder of Atlanta Public Schools. He was an Irish doctor that came to Atlanta and actually saw public education being administered. He saw it because former slave children were actually being educated by the Freedmen's Bureau, and this was around 1867. So Storrs Grammar School and Summerhill Grammar School were the actual first Atlanta quote-unquote public schools. Well, Daniel O'Keefe, having come from Ireland, experienced public education, quote-unquote, and he wanted to replicate that opportunity for all students in Atlanta. He petitioned the city council at around 1869 or so and formed a board of education. At the time, we were an arm of the city, so the doors of Atlanta Public Schools actually opened up in 1872 after funding was provided by the City Council of Atlanta. And here's some pictures of what the students look like, and I always just find it so amazing to see the students dressed in suits and ties and those things. So it was almost the first uniform that we had. Pretty sure. Now just know that our timeline is located on our way to our loading dock. So if we have some visitors, they're doing their work. We have Boys High School, which was the first high school, 1872 to 1900. In 1921, we got Girls High School, but little known fact, Boys High School and Commercial High were merged to form Grady High School. Boys High School was more academic, and Commercial High was more trade-driven, more vocational and of course these were all separated schools. So Commercial High School was really set up for those white kids that were not actually going to pursue academic careers, but more trades. Little known fact, if I'm correct, Truett Cathy attended that school, and we have him on the list here, so let me just definitely check. No, he attended Brown High School. Then we also have Booker T. Washington High School, which was the first African-American high school in the state of Georgia for black kids, and that was in 1924. Another little known fact, in 1926, the Atlanta Public Schools started the radio station, and we were the first radio station to be owned by an educational, in a school system in the country, and today that's WABE. We have Ira Gerald, our first female superintendent, and if you look, you know, she served for quite some time, when the average life of a superintendent was about 2.9 years. In recent times, you know, she was definitely one of the long-standing superintendents. But she went through quite a bit from 1935 to 1944. We had cafeterias placed only in white schools, and teacher salaries were $118 a month. You know, so you can definitely see how that has changed in time. In 1936, now mind you, we were an arm of the city. Well, the city ran out of funds to pay our teachers. So Rich's department store, who's always been a friend of the Atlanta Public Schools, provided scripts where teachers can go to Rich's and actually cash one of these scripts and get paid. In 1954, with Brown versus the Board of Ed, Atlanta was actually one of the most peaceful integration processes in the country, but we still had to go through that process. And it really wasn't fully integrated until about 1961. Mayor Hartsfield, we pay homage to him. He was actually re-elected mayor with a majority of black support. And again, he had a really good relationship with the Atlanta Public School during those times. And Alonzo Krim, our first African-American superintendent, 1973. Now, this is one of my heroes, Dr. Benjamin E. Mays. He was the president of Morehouse College. He was a proud member of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated, but he was also the first black president of the Atlanta Board of Education, elected unanimously by a majority white board. By the time he was elected as the first black president, he had about 45 honorary degrees in 1970. So we come around this way, and of course, we have our quotes that education beyond all other devices of human origin is the great equalizer of conditions of men. And we truly believe that education is the key to quality of life. Now, this side of the room, is always a work in progress, but we pay homage to notable Atlanta Public School alumni. So, of course, we have Dr. Martin Luther King that attended David T. Howard High School. We have Judge Glenda Hatchett that attended Harper High School. Again, Truett Cathy that attended Brown High School. Artist Radcliffe Bailey attended Mays High School. Herman Russell, of course, attended David T. Howard. Michael Hollis attended Booker T. Washington High School. And if you remember Michael Hollis, he was the first African American to own and operate an airline, and it was called Air Atlanta. Jasmine Guy was an alumni as well. I can't recall the high school that she attended, but she is recognized on this wall. The musician Sonny Emery went to Douglas High School and graduated in 1980. The artist Thomas Blackshear went to Farrell and graduated in 1973. NBA legend Walt Frazier went to David T. Howard as well. And this is an authentic David T. Howard football jacket. Now, the joke about this is we found this in the archives, and then some months later, I got a phone call from Mr. Anderson asking whether or not we knew where or have seen his jacket. And I told him, I said, well, yes, Mr. Anderson, we have your jacket, and it's hanging in our archives. Now, you can visit it at any time, but you can't have it back. He said, absolutely. Wear it in good health. And then we go on. Representative Senator White Fowler went to Northside High School. Our city council president, Caesar Mitchell, attended Mays High School. So again, Evander Holyfield. And Evander, I'm not exactly sure, he went to Fulton High School. So again, this wall is dedicated to all of our famous alumni, and as time goes on, we will have more artifacts and recognize more individuals. So we go into the archive, the actual museum room, and this was our former print shop, and now it's our archives. We start with a traditional abacus and the school bell, which we always like to ring when we come in here to open it up. And we start with our desks, the 1865 desk that probably still has some gum stuck underneath someplace. But we go back down memory lane with our old books of Dick and Jane. So and to date myself, these are the books that I used as well. But we also pay homage to our buildings, and if you come closer, you can actually see how some of our buildings have evolved. This was 1867. These buildings were made out of wood. And many of these structures still exist here in Atlanta. Grant Park Elementary School, North Avenue Grammar School, Spring Street Elementary. But we wanted to enter the museum by showing where we've come from in terms of our buildings. Now this desk, I've often come into the archives to get inspiration when I have to write something, because this is the principal's desk that came from David T. Howard High School. And this desk was used to register students. And some of the famous students that were registered on this desk are Martin Luther King Jr., Maynard Jackson, Vernon Jordan, and others. So this desk has some divine intervention in there in terms of just the great men who have actually leaned up on this counter and have signed their names when they were children. And this is a picture of David T. Howard. He actually donated the land that David T. Howard School was actually built on. Some of our glass cases, we have old teacher grade books. Now, of course, during the time of segregation, white teachers went to certain schools and black teachers went to certain schools. Well, they had to be graded by the superintendent and by their superiors to determine where they would go. So these books, this is a 1911 book, an 1898 book, and it actually has the grades that the teachers received before they were placed. And as you can see, as a sign of the time, everything is handwritten in beautiful penmanship. And now, this is an idea of what the teachers looked like back in 1895. Now, can you imagine having teachers that come to school dressed like that? Here, and we have a sample teaching certificate. And this one is pretty dated. Let's see. This is 1926 teacher certificate. One more thing. We look at the evolution of the desk. So circa 1865, 1872, circa 1889, early 1900s, and then 1965. Now, again, I'm not that old, but I do remember having a desk like this. So we go around the room. We have a life-size. This is our wall of bold leadership. So, of course, I took a little personal privilege and highlighted Dr. Mays on this wall because, again, the close relationship that he had with the Atlanta Public Schools, with education, and many of the decisions that he had to make as one of the board chairs that had to deal with the remnants of integration and actually the official desegregation of Atlanta Public Schools, which occurred in 1972. We have Judge Glenda Hatchett as, again, one of our famous alumni, so we just somewhat highlight her, but this display changes periodically. We recognize our board chairs and various board members. Joseph Brown was our first Board of Education chairman. And of course we have Brown Middle School named after him. And then this wall just pretty much takes us through all of our board members. Now, I'm on this wall as the first executive director of the Atlanta Board of Education. But again, we have, we've highlighted people like Emmett Johnson, who was the longest board member to ever serve for 16 years. We also highlight Brenda Muhammad, who was the first African-American female board chair in the history of the Atlanta Public Schools. And we just look at various pictures to see the work that board members have done in the past. This is Dr. Benjamin E. Mays and Superintendent John Letson and Governor at the time, Jimmy Carter, signing the Centennial Proclamation for Atlanta Public Schools. Here we have the first minutes of the Atlanta Board of Education, and this was December 23rd, 1869. And you can just appreciate the wording of it. The Board of Education, elected by the City Ordinance of Atlanta in obedience to the notice published in the daily papers of the city, hold their first meeting in the offices of Dr. Daniel O'Keefe. So we come around and, again, just various displays recognizing our board members of past. Now, you may ask, well, why are you honoring Margaret Mitchell? Well, Margaret Mitchell actually attended an Atlanta Public Schools, and I believe it was Spring Street Elementary School, but I would have to look that up. But 10th Street Grammar School. That's the school that Margaret Mitchell attended. But her father was actually a board chair. So this is her father, Eugene Mitchell, and he served as an Atlanta Board of Education president from 1911 to 1912. But also there's a relationship between Margaret Mitchell and Dr. Mays. They were very good friends, and Margaret Mitchell would send money to Dr. Mays when he was the president of Morehouse College to provide scholarships for African American students. But so she was a philanthropist and, of course, a famous writer. Now here we have some Confederate money. So this was the original Confederate money that existed when, of course, there was that division between the North and the South. And an actual ticket to Gone with the Wind, and a button from Gone with the Wind. The house is called The Dump, and this was where she authored Gone with the Wind. Now this house is actually located on Peachtree Street, where they renovated it, and individuals can go by and visit. But this was one of, I think, a few lifelike replicas of it, and we happen to have our hands on it. This is a conference table from Dr. Mays. So again, these are all places where if you want to come and think and be inspired by great thinkers, you can come and you can sit and touch and do work on the conference desk. Now, I'll talk about the yearbooks last, okay, because as you can see, we have a room filled with yearbooks, but I want to be able to show you some pictures from some various yearbooks. And our display cases, again, highlight many of our schools. That's an actual Boys High diploma, which was, again, our first high school in the district. And some of the pictures that we have laid out are from McNeil Turner High School, where we were actually looking for individuals. So we pulled some of the pictures, and we wanted to see if the pictures were here, and I would give copies to individuals as they would ask for them. And we have a similar display for Washington High School and David T. Howard High School as well. So, again, just some more displays that just show our history and show the access that Atlanta Public Schools has had through the years. Now this was rather interesting, is this typewriter. An actual Underwood typewriter that used a ribbon, and typing, because of the vocational history of Atlanta Public Schools, typing was also a required class. And this is what they used. Now I call this small typewriter the first laptop because it is a miniature version of a full-size Underwood, but it comes with its own case. In this corner, we pay homage to our superintendents, starting with our first superintendent, Bernard Mellon, to our current superintendent, Dr. Maria Castagna. This desk was the actual desk of Dr. Ira Gerald, and she also had her monthly grade book here, and this is something that is very, very rare to find, these names and these grades and the subjects that our students have embarked on. Our next room pays homage to our vocational history. Now, this is the Harper Archer Viking, and many alumni from Harper Archer want to know where this Viking is. Well, it's here in the archives, safe and sound. And the alumni are very proud of that. Now, this is our vocational room, where we have the ability to just see how far we've come from a technology standpoint. This was a television camera where they actually recorded footage, and it was used during the time of the early stages of our television station. And this is one of the more modern movie cameras that they use. And it's funny that this size has returned. We found this Stradivarius violin, and it's around 1920. But we found this in the bellows of one of our schools, and we were able to rescue it. We also pay homage to Dr. Charles Drew, who again performed, life-changing blood transfusions. But the relationship between Charles Drew and Atlanta Public Schools went pretty deep, because Charles Drew was actually the professor of one of our long-standing board members, Asa Yancey. So of course we have Charles Drew Charter School in our district now. Now this is an old Singer sewing machine with the big pedal at the bottom that you have to press the pedal to actually get the wheels moving. Picture of George Washington Carver. And then we have just little things like the telegraph, sample telegraph, a resistor box. And these were all things that our students were able to use as they pursued their vocational trade. This is a 1900 slide projector. And these are the slides. They use glass slides that would actually, and you can see the picture, and they would slide them in someplace in there, and it would project against the wall using a light bulb. And now some of our kids would not know what this is, but this is a record player. It has a built-in speaker, and it actually played records. And an old radio. So we really just want our kids to be able to come, walk down memory lane, be in amazement of how, I think they would call it primitive, but how far we've come from a technology standpoint. And now I'll tell you about our yearbooks. Now, we were very fortunate to have many of the yearbooks for most of our schools. We put them in date order, but I wanted to share with you one of our earliest yearbooks, just so you can see. So this one is Boys High 1912. And as we flip through the pages, we get to see just some of the pictures, how the yearbooks, how individuals dressed in for their yearbook pictures. And this is 1912. That was the orchestra. and the shirt collars.